So now what we're going to do is add the long-term chart here. As I said, 2700 tick chart. You see it over there on the right now. And we're going to use that as our confirmation chart. And what does that mean? Well, that's just like when we do scalp trading. Okay, we use the short-term chart as our setup, and then the medium term as our long-term chart, which we use for confirmation. And primarily, what we're looking for here is mom to be angling in the direction of the trade when we take it. And that's always going to have to be there in order for us to take the trade as a conservative cherry picking. And then also we're going to consult K and D. Now if we're going long and K and D are at the top of the range, we kind of discount them. If we're going short and K and D are at the bottom of the range, we discount them. But if they're in the middle of the range, then we do take them into consideration because those values are significant. It's not just bouncing off of its extreme parameters, because its bounded indicator can only go down to 0 and the highest it can go to is to 100. So, okay, now one thing I'll tell you about the conservative cherry picking is that in general, and I haven't even looked at these yet, but in general it will provide fewer trades. In other words, it will keep you out of some gall darn good trades. Yes, it will. Because again, it's the basic principle. The more confirmation or affirmation that you ask of the market, the fewer trades it's going to give you. So the less, what shall we say, certainty, that's the word. The less certainty or confirmation or whatever you want to call it that you require of the market to take a trade, the less it's going to give you. So you'll get fewer trades. The less confirmation you ask from the market, it'll give you more trades, but not necessarily as reliable. All right, now there's a point of diminishing returns, and like I said, so when you start asking so much of the market, then it actually becomes a negative if you ask for too much confirmation. If you ask for too little confirmation, then your win-loss ratio goes to heck. So there's kind of a sweet spot in the middle, and there's no perfect spot. But, you know, my number's 5. I look for 5 things to align, and I'll even take 4. And that's kind of my sweet spot that I think, okay, it's enough that it's putting the odds on my side, but it's not so much that I'm not going to get any trades. So anyway, that's a general principle of the market. So it applies to the conservative cherry picking style in that it will keep you out of some otherwise good trades. It does give you more confirmation, so that's good. But, and actually there can be a couple of things here. If you get a concurrent setup with the long-term chart, that's one of the biggest benefits, actually, of the conservative cherry picking style. Because you can also get a valid setup on the long-term chart, meaning you would have an eagle-eye trade. At the same time, you would have a conservative cherry-picking style trade. That, I would say, is probably the #1 biggest benefit of the conservative cherry-picking style. That happens. And then another thing is, and this is a little more advanced, but we saw, and we didn't mark these, but we saw a few examples where on the short-term chart or even on the medium-term chart where K maybe didn't get all the way to 20 or all the way to 80, so we would not stay in that, we would not take that trade. And it did work out anyway, right? Well, if you use the long-term chart and you've got a really good setup there on the long-term chart for confirmation, then because you've got more info, then on the short-term or medium-term chart, if K doesn't get all the way to 20 or 80, you can hedge that a little bit, saying, so okay, that's not optimal, but that's offset by the long-term chart having such a great confirmation setup, and again, maybe even a concurrent setup. So then you can loosen the rules on some of the other stuff if it's not absolutely perfect. Okay, be careful of doing that though, especially on the short-term chart. Reason is because the short-term and the long-term have such a loose connection. The ratio between those is 9 to 1. So, not as good. You could be a little more flexible on the signals on the 900 tick chart, and I would rather you do that than being flexible on the 300 tick chart, because there's a lot of noise on the 300 tick chart that doesn't show up on the 2700 tick chart. Okay, or whatever intervals you're using, basically saying the short term and the long term. Okay. Okay, so now all of that, those are general principles, but those principles, those guide what we do. So here's the setup that we looked for last time, well, that we had last time. So the question is, all right, do we have a trade or do we have confirmation on the long-term chart? And the answer is, yeah, kinda. It's not a great one. I mean, first of all, I'm going to look at that wave count, even though that's not required. But I'm going to say, wow, we are in a really extended trend. Is mom angling up? That's really the first thing that we're supposed to look at for confirmation chart. And yeah, technically it is, but it's kind of flat. K is also angling up, but it's kind of flat. Now, K and D are significant at this point because they're in the middle of the range. So we do look at them. K is angling up, which is good. We do want that. But again, they're both pretty neutral. So even though technically we can take the trade based on the confirmation chart, it's not giving us a strong confirmation. Okay. So anyway, if you were doing the conservative style, you could take that trade. All right, now let's go on to the next one. Okay, this one we could not take. See, now here is a trade on the that we would take on the aggressive cherry picking that we would be filtered out of on the conservative cherry picking. Mom's angling clearly down here, clearly down. So we could not take this trade. It would have kept us out of a winning trade. Okay, at least one where we would make money. And in fact, that turned into a pretty decent win, didn't it? Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's an example of where requiring more confirmation of the market did not work out so good for us. Okay, wait a minute. Did I miss any triangles here? I don't think so. That was that one, right? Right. Okay, good. Okay, let's find our next triangle. Yep, there goes my alarm. Okay, here we go. All right, now, okay, so now this one is great. We could have actually taken it below the low of that bar even. But yes, so now in this one, on our long-term confirmation chart, we do get the confirmation. In fact, KD, Mom are all angling down. By the way, just as a disclaimer, you do have to watch this stuff live intra-bar. The signals can be a little different. Live intra-bar might take an extra bar or so to get in, but this is done for illustration purposes, for teaching purposes. Okay, but anyway, so the bottom line is, yes, long-term chart, KD, Mom all angling down. And, who knows? We might even have a nice move on it, but the bottom line is we get confirmation. Alrighty. Where's our next triangle? Okay, here comes our next triangle. Oh, yeah. So this is the wave 9 on the midterm chart. So it's a pure price reversal pattern, just like the last one was. And again, we've seen all the signs, so we'll just go over to the long-term chart. Yes, KD, Mom all angling down. Mom is actually a little flat there, but technically it's going down, so technically we do get the signal. Okay, so again, would that have made any difference? Not necessarily, but the one thing that we're looking at is we have that extended downtrend over there. And that's going to have to, that will reverse at some point. Extended downtrend on the long-term chart. Okay, let's look for our next triangle. All right, now we're back into open outcry hours. All right, here it is. All right, so again, we would be filtered out of this trade Now this one actually be good, okay? Because this is one that did not work. This was one where we're taking several different setups at one time. On the 900 tick chart, it's a rubber band trade. It's a reload pattern. It's a second retrace in the trend. We've got a mini divergence there, second chance pattern on both short-term and medium-term chart. But we go over to the long-term chart, and Mom is clearly and dramatically angling down. So right away, that's all we need to see, and we would say no, no way, cannot take that trade. And this trade, again, was not a winner. We would have ended up getting stopped out of it if on the aggressive cherry picking. So it would have saved us on that. Here, there's no setup. Okay, so, there's one place where it would have saved us a loss. All right, here's the next one. This is a first retrace in the trend on the 900 tick chart. KD amount, great setup on short-term, medium-term. Now, look over at the long-term. Yes, confirmation. K angling down sharply, Mom angling down nicely. So, okay, great. Also, by the way, you notice that we also get a concurrent setup here. Cycle high, first cycle high after that turns down. All right, and so, that's cool. We also got an engulfing candlestick on the 2700 tick chart. Now, depending on how the timing of the three charts aligned, unless you're into the last 300 ticks of the long-term chart, you wouldn't see that engulfing candlestick when you took the trade. But after you took the trade, you can still consult that and say, oh, okay, did that help the probabilities of this trade? Now, you just see, oh, okay, I've got that. So even after the fact, that can be helpful. Okay, let's look for our next triangle before time runs out. Okay, here, oh yeah, this was the one that's at the end of the day. Notice that's very interesting. Let me just look at something here quickly. Okay. Okay. Now, okay, yeah, this is good. So on the basis of the aggressive cherry picking, this would be the earliest we could get in, which is great because it's the highest bar. Now, Mom and K and D have not angled down yet on the 2700 tick chart. So we have to go another bar. Did it angle down now yet? No. Angled down now yet? No. Angled down now yet? No. Well, now it's too late because now our cycle indicator's gone to the bottom of the range. So too late. So we're going to get a signal, but when does that signal come in? It doesn't come in at all that day. Okay, so that's another example of how the employing the conservative cherry picking style, requiring confirmation from the long-term chart, would have kept us out of an otherwise, good trade, successful trade. All right, did we have any more? I remember that one. Yep, I thought we did. Okay, so now here's another one. The basis for this, oh yes, 900 tick chart. This is the one that was just like 50 seconds before the open. So this was a good one. We liked this one because we had a couple things here. Number one, we had a 5-wave downtrend on the short-term chart and a retest of the low, so a double bottom. We had engulfing candlesticks on the 900 tick chart, which may or may not be noticed until a little bit later. We've got Mom angling up on the medium-term chart. We've got the first cycle low after Dad turns up on the medium-term chart, which we like to see at the end of a trend as a momentum shift. On the short-term trigger, we have engulfing candlestick. We have a triple cross with mini divergence. We have KD, Mom all angling up. Now, we add the long-term chart, and what do we got? Okay, so Mom clearly angling up. That's the main thing. That's step one. Then number 2, what about our cycle indicator? Okay, well, we've got a reverse head and shoulders, second chance pattern there. So that's good. So yes, that adds to the probability of the trade. We like it. All right. And I don't remember if we had any more after that. But we got to, well, we really don't have any more time, but let me just see if we had any more triangles after that. Doesn't look like it. Okay. So that's all that we marked. All right. So very good. So you can see some of the dynamics I was telling you about. It kept us out of, what, 1 or 2 bad trades. It kept us out of a couple of really good winning trades. And we didn't really get a great example of the concurrent setup thing that I was talking about, where you can get an eagle eye setup on the 2700 tick chart. Let me just go back and let's look at that real quick, even though we're technically out of time. Let's look for, oh, that's because we were in a, extended uptrend, mega trend. Yeah. So when you get that kind of thing, you're not getting, great setups anymore. Because, yeah, you're in a mega trend. So, okay. So that's why we didn't get any good examples of that. That makes total sense. What about here? Did we get this far? I don't think we got that far. Okay. So what we'd be looking for is, again, just eagle eye stuff, right? Like once we do start an uptrend on the long-term chart, well, there's your first cycle low in a trend, but K doesn't even get close to 20, so we don't even look at that. Here it gets very, very close, so I'd look at that, especially with the mini divergence. Oh yeah, I would definitely look at that, see? And that worked out fine. And then again, here we get a wave 7, so I would actually, consider taking that short. Again, have to look at the other charts and see what we got there. And in fact, in this kind of thing, we would look at a lot of different things. But let's look at it real quick. I'm not supposed to do this. It's too late, but what the heck. Oh, very interesting. Okay. Now see, this is an example here. This is a very, very good example. So I'm going to have to say it real fast. So we've got a price trend extended wave reversal pattern set up on the 2700 tick chart, right? All right, this would be really kind of eagle-eye trading. Then on the medium-term chart, we've got KD mom-angling down. That's good, but no concurrent setup. No reason to go short on that. On the short-term chart, we do have a concurrent setup. We've got, again, a wave 7 extended trend up. We've got a mini divergence pattern there, all kinds of good stuff. Now, but again, see, this is what you'll see a lot, is on the short term, because the short term and the really long term, in this case the 300 and the 2700 tick charts, are so loosely correlated, 9-to-1 ratio, a lot of stuff's going to happen on the 300 tick chart without hardly anything happening on the 300 tick chart without anything happening on the 27 hardly. So look at this. Okay, here we are. Now, this is our cycle high. We put in a cycle low. We put in another cycle high. Okay, what's really happened over there in the 2700 tick chart? Okay, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to move the cursor. Okay, so cycle high, cycle low, cycle high. And if while I'm doing that, you look at the 2700 tick chart, what's happened? Nothing. It's just moved down. We go to one more bar. So there's no indication of this double top, which we have on the 300 tick chart, no indication of a double top on that 2700 tick chart. We've got this cycle high, cycle low, cycle high, and then going down, all in just the same cycle high. And not only that, just within 2 bars. So that shows you how you've got to be prepared to understand that it's better to take trades later or triggers later on the short-term chart if you can. Now the problem is you don't always get the ideal triggers. In fact, a lot of times you don't. So this is where when you get something like this, and you'd have to wait till this time, You might consider taking it sometimes. It's aggressive because K at this time on the 300 tick chart is not back up to 80. But we are putting in another cycle high, and we've got concurrent setups on both the short term and the long term. And I like to when that happens, I like to wait an extra cycle on the short term to actually enter. Again, the problem is K may not get all the way back up to 80. So then you have to decide whether or not you want to, fudge it a little bit. I was talking about this earlier, but this is an example of what I was referring to. Fudging it on the short-term chart in this case. But here's the good news. We've got KD mom down on the long-term chart. KD mom down on the short-term chart. Just K and mom down on the short-term chart. But also we have another setup on the short-term chart, and that's the first cycle high after dad turns down. So lots of evidence. Remember, we're looking for preponderance of the evidence. So now you decide if you're willing to give up that one piece of evidence, which is K getting up to 80, because the other evidence is so weighty, okay? So this is where we allow you to, or you can allow yourself, I should say, to veer from, the strict rules. The methodology, 5 energy methodology, is a very strict, objective, rule-based methodology. But it's your trading, it's your money. So if you decide you want to veer from the objectivity of it and apply a little bit of discretion when there's so much other strong evidence, well, that's up to you. It's not technically part of the methodology, but I'm just pointing it out as an advanced trader. Considering the principles that are behind here, that is something that you might consider. It's up to you.